my country, the United States, has made some mistakes, which I think it has. But meanwhile, other countries are individually fighting and individually protecting themselves. And I cannot quite understand why a country such as India could not take leadership in uniting all of the rest of the world in saying, look, we want to keep open. We want to keep the rule of law. Yes, there are a few things that are needed for national security, but not everything. And right now, at least in my country, every protectionist in the whole country is running and using national defense as an excuse. And I think that some kind of multilateral move on the part of almost everybody, let us call it the world minus two, could really make a difference in this, and that it's a right thing for India, which has been a leader right along internationally, to seize the leadership and to articulate the benefits to everybody of this. And right now is a perfect time, I think, because we already have the epidemic. That was shown to be worldwide and to be something we cannot individually solve. We already have other things, the climate issues, which cannot be solved on an individual basis. Why do we not get a coalition, instead of everybody fighting and running in their own corner to defend it, to move together and coalesce, maybe ignoring the two big bullies in the room?
I think that.
I'll take one more.
Yeah, all right. Yes, please.
Yes, you spoke about the desire to be part of many clubs, and then you spoke about protectionism and so on. So there are some obvious clubs in this region when it comes to trade. What is your view of the potential of joining those clubs?
Okay, next question. Look, I think what Larry Summers and K. Singh did was fantastic. Okay, they created a certain template, a pathway, a very serious prospect of how do we tackle what has long been debated. Your question is actually the next step. So what do we, what do we do with it? How do we take it forward? And I don't think there's a single answer. I think some of it rests with the G20 and the willingness of the G20 to prioritize this issue, use the report and its recommendations, and how do you take it forward. To some extent, I would say there has to be some degree of bilateral backup as well. There'll be some countries whose influence or where they stand will be very fundamental to the issue of reform and recapitalization. There would be, to some extent, you build up a kind of bottom-up pressure. I could see that at the Summit of the Future from a lot of developing countries, many of whom actually referred to the report saying, look, it's not like you guys don't know what to do. I mean, somebody has laid out a way out there. So I would say, ideally, we need a kind of all of the above answer for this to really move. To me, much of it is really to convince the key players, and I think we all know who they are, the key players to give it the priority. Because my worry is not, in a broad sense, people want to do it, but to make that actionable and then particularly in the US to create that kind of momentum, because if you are ultimately talking more resources, we are also talking the US Congress. So I would say that's broadly the space which I'd be looking at, which actually brings me in a way to the next question, observation. I'm not sure I would go with the proposition that most things are working well and there are few things which need to be tweaked and there are one or two countries who are a problem. I don't think that's true. I think there are big issues in the international economy. Subsidies, fair trade is a very big issue. But if there is today a reaction to a lot of this, it is out of a sense that the rule of law you refer to, I would say the rules of trade. The rules of trade are being tested by the reality of subsidies, by very opaque production centers. Now, opaque production centers, both in terms of goods, even more so in terms of technology, in terms of data. So, I think there are certain realities which it is not possible to gloss over anymore. We can't say, the problem is in one country and one particular administration. I think there's a deep-rooted problem out there. I mean, look right now, you have a democratic administration which has passed the IRA and the Chips and Science Act. Now, why have they done that? Because they actually have come to the conclusion that it's not possible to protect their interests in an international system which is being gamed or which is being subsidized or which is being manipulated. I think those are hard realities out there. So I'm not sure that this requires a neat fix and people coming together. I think it's a much deeper malaise, and if we do not diagnose the problem, right, which actually brings me to the third observation, the regional clubs. When we look at some of the clubs, including the trading regimes on offer, I think a lot of our concerns are exactly the same. How do we protect ourselves against export surges from a heavily subsidized economy? So today the rules are being tested against the reality of practices. So we keep saying, well, this is how the rules are. Well, those may be the rules. The realities are very, very different. And we can see that in the numbers. And for a country with the kind of per capita income we have, these are very big political and socio-economic risks that we are taking. Do you really want to expose your economy and your society to the reality of massively subsidized trade, which actually can, as I said, which can also be weaponized with certain purposes in mind? So trade is no longer trade. A lot of trade and a lot of technology, I'm afraid, national security, like it or not, and some of the issues like subsidies and opaqueness, they are fair square in the middle of that conversation. And if we continue to duck it, we are essentially not moving in the direction of a solution.
Thank you. I think that there's a great deal of interest, so I'll seek your indulgence just by stretching the thing for a few minutes. Rajiv, first you, then Jean-Pierre Lando, then I think that Prachi, you had your hand up for a long time. Yes.
So I just wanted to perhaps be undiplomatic to the quintessential diplomat. What you've heard from Anne Kruger and Lord Stern is a sort of implicit plea for India to take a leadership position on the global south. But in a world that is so geopolitically fragmented, you have talked about the coalition of the willing. Why do we want to waste our time positioning ourselves as a leader of the global south? Why don't we very pragmatically focus on bilateral deals to actually address the single most important cross-border capital requirement, which is for climate? So climate transition, financing for that, my question to you is, what are your views, what is already happening, and what are the prospects for bilateral climate diplomacy for India to raise the cross-border funding it needs for our net zero transition?
All right. Thank you. Jean-Pierre Lando.
Yeah, Minister, you made a very impressive presentation on the relationship between technology and international relation. Now we're coming to the age of artificial intelligence. It's coming much faster than we had expected a few years ago. India will play a leading role in that field. Do you think it's time for some governance initiative, international governance initiative of AI, or is it too soon in the technological process to think of it?
Okay, Prachi.